Hey friends, welcome back to Checkbox Other. I am so excited for you to meet today's guest, Trish Fontanilla. Trish and I met as we shared a stage for a panel discussion all around finding your wonderful career support squad. So it was all about mentors, advisors, sponsors, coaches, and so much more. And I am so grateful that that day when we got to meet in person a bunch of years ago has led to right now where we have stayed in touch, and her wonderful energy, which you will feel, it's infectious. She's amazing. Oh, she just permeates so much humanity and goodness and hope, and just she makes me smile. So I hope she makes you smile through this episode. A little bit about Trish. Trish is the head of community and social media at Simpler, a human first, machine enabled customer experience solution that we talk a lot about in this episode. So if that is something that you're interested in learning more about, if you're somebody that is wondering what's going on with all the AI side of things, but also how do we stay, connected as human beings as we become so steeped in technology, we talk so much about that in this episode, and I'm eager to hear what you think about it because it's something that is so pressing right now. Trish is also the co-founder and chief energy officer for Boston Filipinos, a community focused on elevating Filipino culture through events, content, and programming in Boston. And she recently joined the board of directors at a food rescue nonprofit called Food for Free. So there's so many things that Trisha's got going on, and don't worry, there's so much more that you haven't even heard yet. I learned so much about her in this episode, and I'm just so excited for you to get to know more about her. The biggest thing that I want to make sure I say on the upfront of this, if you are listening and you are thinking about potentially starting to do more speaking engagements or get your story out there, or you want to further your speaking career in some way, or you just want to test out what it feels like to be the voice behind the mic, listen through to this, because Trish and I talk about some opportunities for you to apply and to actually have the mic and share your story with an incredible group of people. And so I really encourage you. I work with folks on this in coaching as well. I really encourage you to trust that your story really does matter. If you're listening to this, I think you understand how much I value stories, especially stories where it's where we feel like we're navigating our own journey towards belonging. And in that, we share our stories and we are allowing ourselves to be witnessed, and we witness ourselves sharing the incredibly important elements of who we are and how we've gotten to where we are. So for those of you that are considering kind of stepping into the speaking world, or even just trying it out for a second, definitely listen through towards the end of this episode where we talk very specifically about an opportunity that I would love for you to apply for. And I know Trish would too. So without further ado, here is my friend Trish. Hey Trish, welcome to Checkbox Other. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so excited. I'm here, but I wish we were closer than we are.
I know. I know.
Through screens and other things.
Yes. The last time we saw each other, we had like the most delicious tea. That's what I remember.
I was going to say the last time we saw each other, I had a London fog for the first time. And I have since had many London fogs, and I don't know how it was not introduced to me sooner, but I have made up for it.
Good. I'm glad. So, London fogs are like my favorite thing. And I will tell you, I started going to a new coffee shop recently because it opened during the pandemic. And I started going to a Cafe Nero, and that's where I used to get it. It was a newer one. And the London fog game is not quite up to par. So I have changed my order, and I just make them at home. So I love a good London fog. And I'm so glad that you were on Team London Fog now too.
Yeah, I remember the food that was present. And then also I met someone who overheard our conversation, and I ended up highlighting her for Boss Filipinos.
Come on.
Because I think I was loudly talking about Filipinos. And then later she said, I was sitting at the table near you. Were you talking about Filipinos in Boston? And I'm like, yes. Yes, I was.
And thank you for not being sly about it. Thank you for coming and telling me. So here's a perfect example. Anybody that's listening to this is an invitation. If there's something that you want to talk about, reach out, talk. This is the important stuff. Trish is somebody that I met at an incredible speaking event, and I was sitting next to her. I feel probably we were sitting, if I wasn't sitting next to you, I could feel you. And your energy was just like everything. So I am just so excited that you're here right now. And I want to start and have us get like a little Cliff Notes version of the story of Trish. I always say like twists, turns, aha moments, pivots, wherever you want to share to where you
Yeah.
are today.
Whoa. These questions freak me out. So I'm gonna do the best that I can. Because they always change and it's like dependent on. I think the interesting thing about podcasts is, and you know this as a speaker that has done many, many speaking gigs, you're always kind of tailoring things for a particular audience, but I feel like you've interviewed so many awesome, amazing people. So your audience must be so amazing and awesome and diverse. And I'm totally pandering to these people that aren't in the room with us right now. But yeah, my name is Trish, like we discussed. I grew up in a little Italian town in New Jersey.
Nice.
And people are like, what? And I'm like, the pizza place was called The Godfather. Like, that's how small and Italian it was in New Jersey. And I moved to Boston to go to Emerson College. A friend of mine was going to Boston College and was like, you need to come to Boston. It's super amazing. And Emerson's a communications and performing arts school right in the heart of Boston, so right next to Boston Common. I had a buffet major minors, so I graduated with a degree in writing, literature, and publishing, and minored in psychology and performance studies. And so
Yes.
clearly, right after that, I started working in hospitality and the restaurant industry. I will say, and I kind of skip over this, and maybe we'll talk about it. So the big like life, if I think about chapters, my college graduation was a huge closing chapter for me because unfortunately my father passed away the weekend I graduated from college. So I have this, it's like very cinematic and it's maybe a novel I'll write at some point in my life. But I walked across stage, got my fake diploma because as many folks know, there's never anything real in there. And rushed out. My roommate's brother was in the lobby with like flowers and my clothes, and I had worn this like white dress, and I immediately ran to South Station in Boston. Had a fruit meltdown on the for the train conductor because I couldn't find my
Mm-hmm.
um ticket, and he saw this kid in like a graduation gown. I was like, what is happening? Went home, changed like into this all black outfit, and went to my father's wake, and then that was like end of act one. Blackout is
Yeah.
like that moment. And so after that, I had during my senior year of college, I'd actually worked in LA for a little bit. I worked at HBO Films. I thought I was going to move out and work somewhere in the industry. My mom kind of hinted and was like, can you not like move across the country right now?
Mm.
And I love the tri-state. I love New Jersey. I used to take the train to New York all the time, but Boston, there's just something about Boston that I love.
Mm.
Um, Kind of controversial. I think it's like a borough of New York. Like it's not comparable to New York.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to stay here. And I had 3 jobs. So I worked at a gym, I worked at a restaurant, I worked in a cafe. Pro tip to any 20 somethings that are trying to figure out life. I had my annual take was bad, but I ate really great food and I was super fit. So if there are things that you love, I almost like volunteered at a dance uh training center too, because I was like, what else do I want to do that I can
Yeah.
like kind of, I was living this like barter lifestyle. And I went back to visit Emerson after a few months, and the dean of students at the time, super lovely, had heard about my dad and basically was like, hey, you are trying to figure out life right now. Come work at Emerson, like look at some of the job listings. You'll have a salary, you'll have health insurance, and end up working there in their living learning communities. So basically, people would take, no matter what your major was, they would take their writing classes together. And then
Oh.
there'd be some sort of capstone project. So there'd be a book that was published and they'd do a book reading at the Barnes and Noble, or there'd be a media show and then the CEO of Harmonix would speak, or there'd be a play and they'd get kids from a local school to perform it. So there'd be some like cool thing there. And about a year in, they were kind of restructuring and they're very good to alumni. So they were like, you can stay here if you want, but we're going to move things around. At the time, I had randomly been reading about music therapy. It's something that I'd always thought was really interesting. And it's so funny, like the power of libraries. Actually, side word bubble note, I went to library school instead of preschool. We can talk about that later if you want to.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I used to go to the library and just like pick up books that were in interesting things and read that way versus I know what book I want.
Right.
And I'd randomly picked up 2 books on music therapy. um, Berkeley was hiring for someone to work in the music therapy department on like kind of the admin side.
Uh-huh.
And while I was interviewing, I mentioned the books that I was reading and did not even put this together. One of the people I mentioned was a Berkeley grad, and they thought I was like really, just like really into it. I'm like, oh, in my head, I'm like, I just picked these 2 books up out of like the new releases. So I ended up working at Berkeley for about 3 years. In the meantime, so I'm working at this 9 to 5. This is right around Yelp first coming to Boston. And for people that weren't on early Yelp, you used to be able to put who wants to have dinner tonight, and you'd randomly have dinner with like tons of people. So someone say, who wants to have dinner? And I meet up with a dozen people in Chinatown and we do family style dining. And that was
Oh,
the jam back in the day. Not what it is now, and another conversation for another day, but so really awesome people. And a lot of those folks that were those early adopters
yeah.
were people that work these day jobs and like, I have this idea for this company, and everyone just had this side hustle startup. And for me, I'd never been exposed to startups before or that kind of stuff. I'd always, made websites on Angel Fire and GeoCities like back in the day and that kind of stuff. But I never really, I don't know, thought about it as a career. And I had a friend of mine, I always shut him out, Kabir.
Hi,
He
Kabir.
had this, yeah, like alpha. So like there's, when products go to market, there's beta, which is testing period. Alpha's like, I came up with the idea. I kind of put it together. I'm going to show like loved ones. I'm not going to even like show potential customers. So he sends me this alpha of one of the things he's working on. And I, not knowing anything in life, sent him like 3 pages of feedback on this alpha product. And
Wow.
he was like, just send me feedback. And I'm like, so on this button, I thought it was going to go here, like just all this different feedback. And he was like, have you ever thought about working in tech? And I was like, no, no, like not
Not at
1 ounce
all.
of feedback. And so the combination of that and seeing how Yelp was being built, because the early employees of Yelp were all community builders. And the person that I kind of looked up to that was in Boston at the time was this woman, Lagaya Tishi, and she ended up being, I think she was like employee 5 at Yelp.
Oh,
She ended
wow.
up going and building Airbnb's community, and then she worked at a few different places. I think she's an investor at this point and
Yeah.
is maybe doing some other venture. But the combination of, you know, being exposed to like this new app that I thought was really cool, bringing people together, seeing a business plan where community building and community builders were at the center of it, and having these friends that were like, hey, check out this app, test
Yeah.
it out. Like, what are your just people really asking questions? I'm like, oh, cool. Like, this sounds really, really awesome. Still terrifying. So it's the reason why I stayed at Berkeley for so long is I would work the 9 to 5 and then side hustle and try to do social media things and community things. And late 2010, I went to the Austin City Limits Music Festival
Mhm.
and like sat in a field and like listened to all this music.
As you
And when
do.
as you do, and then when I came into work, um, it kind of just like came out of my mouth. My boss was like, how was it? I'm like, it's really awesome. I don't think I could work here anymore. And then she looked at me and I looked at me and I was like, "Bleh, bleh." Like, what's
Oops.
going
My bad.
on? Yeah. And I gave like 3 months. I think I gave October, November, December, like I gave about 3 months notice because
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
want to add leave before they hired someone new for the next semester. I think the good part about that, I think with higher ed is, there are these finite times when
Yeah.
I mean, there's never a good time to leave, but when the students are in school, obviously versus summer break is not the best.
Mm.
Um, and I kind of gave myself, it's like, okay, well, something internally told me I needed to move on to the next thing. Did not have anything lined up. But I was going to events and startup events and tech events like 5 nights a week, just like
Yeah.
networking. And I started to get some gigs, and that gave me like the dumb confidence. Still
Yes.
not having health insurance to think I could do it on my own. And around May of 2011, I was like bags packed, leaving Boston. Because I'm like, all right, I'm doing social media, I'm doing this tech stuff. I could be doing it remotely. Why am I paying money? Like maybe this is the, live in my mom's basement part of my life.
Mm.
My mom at the time had an orange velvet couch that was covered in plastic in the basement. I had this whole like live from my mom's basement situation show that I was gonna do that I was like half being real about, half not being real about. And Boston had this Ruby Riot event
Wow.
that a few different founders had started. And unlike other networking events, it was how can I pay it forward? So our name tags would say like, I'm Trish, ask me questions about social media or music. So in addition, I didn't even mention this, I was also interning for a startup thinking that I would get hired, but they were bootstrapping, and then
Yes.
guess how that turned out.
I got one of those stories too. Yeah.
So I was doing 9 to 5, going to all these events, and also, moonlighting as this intern for a music startup. And so I was like, ask me about music, ask me about social media, ask me about, I think I was starting to like build myself as a community builder. And I tweeted out that, and some guy tweeted to me back and was like, hey, we should meet up. And I clicked on his picture, and he had like 30 tweets. He had a really small profile. I was like, all right, well, come find me at the event, because I'm not going to go meet you some other place. And I showed up to this event. It's packed because I think the Globe or the Herald ended up picking up this like really cool pay it forward networking event for tech people. I hear that it's packed on Twitter. And so I had a folder at the time, I think, that had resumes in it. And what I did is I flipped it to the white side, and I wrote, it was like some like Georgie Cohen, if she ever hears this, gave me this developer pun. It was something like, I'm not a developer, but my awesomeness still validates. There's something language. And then I wrote Trish of the Trade on it, took my headphones, wrapped the folder like around myself, like a sandwich sign, used my headphones as like the thing to hang around my neck,
Yeah.
and started walking around this event. People were taking pictures of me.
That's
And
amazing.
this guy is like, hey, I would love to talk to you. And we start talking. And then one of my friends comes in and cuts us off. And 2 people were like, you need to talk to that guy. And I'm like, all right, cool. But there's a lot of stuff
There's a
happening.
lot going on. Yeah.
And we end up talking again. He pulls out a cocktail napkin, is like, this is where I see asynchronous and synchronous video going. He's drawing on this cocktail napkin. And I'm like, cool, dude. We're at a bar. What's going on? I'm leaving Boston. And he's like, well, we should meet again. I'm like, okay, cool. Because 2 other people, actually from Emerson, that I met in the professional world, vouched for him. I'm like, all right, well, he'll give me some consulting work on the way out.
Yeah.
He gives me an address. We meet up. There's like no sign on the door with his company name. And I'm like, cool. So I like message a couple people to make sure that they know where I am. Go up to meet with him. First 10 minutes, he's like, hey, I'm starting this company. I would love for you to join us. And by us, you'd be the first employee. So just FYI. And then end up being a company called VSnap, which is a video messaging startup, way before its time.
Yeah.
And that is what got me into startups. And from there, I like build up to that. I'm like, is there anything else to talk about? So I'm there for almost 4 years. I ended up working at a company called Startup Institute, which is for people that are career transitioning. End up working for a company called Freight Farms, which is a very cool startup. It's not, I guess, a scale up at this point, but we took 40-foot shipping containers and turned them into vertical hydroponic farms.
Oh, cool.
Consulted for 3 years, and now I'm at my current company. And I rambled for a really long time in between.
I mean, are you kidding? How many
that was like the lead up.
movies can we make out of this?
Yeah, I think that's the lead up. But for me, it was always a little bit interesting because I just like didn't think community building was a career. I didn't think I'd ever work in tech. Thought I was always going to have office jobs. And since that first company, I was telling someone the other day, I haven't really applied to a company in 14 years. It's always been someone that met me at a previous event. Like my current boss I met at Mass Challenge, which that first video startup went through 10 years ago. And he emailed me last year and said, hey, I remember you from the office 9 years ago and you did community. I would love to talk to you about this XYZ thing. And we weren't even connected on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I think the networking piece, once I got into startups, I like fell down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Well, and I'll add something as somebody that experiences the magic of Trish, that there is something about how you show up in a room that is memorable. Makeshift, I was going to say makeshift sandwich board or not. I think that that's part of that story that is, so important. And also I think the beauty of, there's such a vibe, and I don't know if you would say this about yourself, but even in the way you told that story of just kind of being so open and curious, and I don't know if the go with the flow is what I mean all the way, but being open and ready for things to stretch your imagination. And it sounds so much. I mean, first of all, I wrote this down in big letters, library school. There's so much about it that feels like there's so much that's shaped about, let me pick up this book and learn about something new. There's so much about your story that felt like it was shaped by your just kind of voracious appetite for learning. And I think that that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And if anything, for folks that are, have experienced the last 2 years, I mean, we're all learning things that we didn't know we were going to learn, no matter where that falls in your life spectrum, individually, collectively, work, personal, interpersonal, all these dynamics. We're constantly having to build our learning muscles in ways that we weren't taught to. And so I think there's such a beauty in kind of having such a baseline of being somebody that seems, I mean, the other piece that came in was like the hustle that you had. Oh my goodness. The amount of job. Oh my goodness.
I'm tired now though.
Yeah. With age comes some of that too. Yeah. But it's just so cool. I mean, it's just, the beauty of it is it really does feel like you are open to what life has to offer, and you are willing to kind of see what comes of things. And I think, yes, the early adopter energy, but I think also just the idea that, again, I think so many people are coming back to now that we haven't been able to be in community, of the importance of connection and being in community with other people, no matter what that avenue is showing itself up as, I think is so important. And again, like, as much as community building didn't seem like a job, it is the biggest. I mean, how many companies are based on community building right now? But even more so, the companies that are built, like a Facebook is built on community building, but what's happened is it's become so separate from community that you're now seeing that it could use a lot more human touch, rather than whatever else is happening on the back end that makes it so we kind of detach from our humanity. So I'm just like, there's so, as much as you felt like you were kind of going all over, I was following that through line all the way through. So it was great. Yeah. Well, here's my question of you. It's my question for the whole, for everyone on the podcast, is my favorite question. And I feel like I'm so excited for your answer, actually. I'd love to hear about a time, or you can always share more than one if you'd like, where you have felt other or different, or as though you don't belong, and how that has really shaped your journey.
Yeah, I was thinking actual literal checkbox, my like first checkbox moment. And I think it was 4th or 5th grade. I'm pretty sure it was 5th grade. And I was taking a standardized test, and I went to fill out the box, and I went to fill out Asian, and my teacher taps me on the shoulder and said, "You're not Asian anymore, you're a Pacific Islander." And my background is, my parents are from the Philippines. Both of them are from different islands in the Philippines. They came to Newark, New Jersey, met each other there. And I happened also in the New Jersey area, along with my 3 older brothers. And so I was like, okay, cool. Well, fourth or fifth grade, I'm not like all these amazing Gen Zers and younger that ask questions and things. So I'm like, okay, teacher told me something.
Right.
Okay, I'm Pacific Islander. And then I think the next standardized test I took, there was no Pacific Islander box. And so they said, oh, when there's no Pacific Islander box, then you fill in the Asian box. And in my head, I'm like, okay, is this like I before E except after C? Like, do other people, and I don't remember even talking about this with any, there was always one other Filipino girl in my class. From K through 12 there was one, sorry, K through 8 there was one, and then from 9 through 12 there was one. And I never thought to talk about it with them. I didn't talk about it with any of my classmates. I feel like it came up in college when someone said, something, all the things that happen in college, all the conversations that happen in college when you grow up in a really tiny town and no one talks about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was such an interesting thing to me, but it did not feel, I didn't feel that until I started to try and put the pieces together later on in life. So we talked about a little about this in the bidding. So I co-founded and I'm the chief energy officer of a group called Boss Filipinos, which is a Filipino community group here in Boston. And we do, or at least pre-pandemic, we had events and pop-ups and eat-ups. And right now we're mainly just doing content. And it's the group that I thought was going to happen for a really long time. But I found out that I didn't know the questions to ask or the people to go to find similar community groups. But I do still think we are a little bit different than a lot of other groups out there. But we want to be like the connector of all the Filipino immigrant community groups and just a lot of different Asian groups here in Boston. But it wasn't until like I started this group in my 30s, and I feel like I started to figure out who I was after 30. I hopefully other people will figure it out sooner, but for me it's like, I was definitely depressed after my dad died, and that kind of led to me just going to work and having 3 jobs and just kind of living life that way.
Yeah.
But I had so many people that were lovely and gracious and pulled me up along the way to get me to where I am today, where I can even just reflect on stuff like this and have the brain space for it. And so it's really interesting when I think about that stuff, because and then tying the pieces of the otherness. Like I, again, in my 30s, for the first time told a story about growing up in a semi-racist neighborhood. And Tito Jackson was on the panel. He was actually, I think he was the moderator actually, because someone asked me, what drives me to be a community builder. I'm like, I spent so much of my life feeling othered and feeling like I didn't belong. And I think I might have been dismissive and said, I don't know if this is racism, but, and then I told like a story about how I had neighbors that would call the cops on us when we had parties, and the cops would show up and be like, we got called for a ruckus. And we're like, I don't know, we're like line dancing to the Macarena. Is that, I know that might be offensive to people, but it's just like stuff like that happened, but I never talked about it. And it wasn't something that was of conversation. My dad in particular was someone that was like, let's assimilate, like, let's be quote unquote American, let's not cause trouble, work really hard, have your head down, and someone will recognize you. And it wasn't until I got out of living there and was in, had those like college moments of, being with people from different places and them asking like, different questions. One of the things I read about Boss Philippines is I had 2 birthday parties growing up, and I thought that was a thing that people had. And that I had like 12 to 2 pool party, Domino's pizza, Subway, like 50, whatever the long, not 50 foot, or maybe it was 50 foot. Those like
the long
pizzas,
ones.
the yellow cake with the white frosting from the supermarket parties. And then that night from like 7 to like whenevs, we would have, karaoke, pig roast, dance, like just all this different stuff that was very much the Filipino side of my identity versus the like school identity or the like quote unquote, I'm using so many quotation marks with my hands podcast.
I do it all the time. Yeah. Air quotes, everyone, air quotes.
Air quotes. And I just, all these things happened to me and I didn't think that I knew I was different because I definitely had moments where I didn't feel like I belonged, but I didn't know that I was different.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that, of all these little bits and pieces and other people that had also been othered telling me like, no, that's valid.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I thought that was just like a thing that happened to everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something. But when I think about that was a big moment. But even before that, when I was 5, the same neighbor that used to call the cops on us would yelled at her. It was the grandmother. When the grandmother moved into the house, we had like this kind of peaceful, in the 70s, I heard, I wasn't around yet, neighborhood. And then, some folk, like this grandma, for example, like people started to have these intergenerational houses. And this grandmother in particular yelled at me when I was 5 years old to go back to where I came from. And I like did not even know to comprehend. My dad didn't want to explain it to me.
Yeah.
Like brought me in the house.
And you're like, you mean that door? That's my house. That's where I came from. What are you talking about?
My mom's belly. Like, what's up with you? And so stuff like that, again, you don't, or at least for me, like I didn't even realize it until later of like, oh, this happened. And then when I was in school, this like microaggression happened. And then, oh, this. So I'm even still, when people ask me certain questions, I'll remember something. I'm like, oh, that was suppressed deep down inside.
Yeah.
So I've definitely had, I think being othered is a huge cornerstone of why I'm a community builder, because I don't want people to feel the way I did then. And then also, yay, therapy.
Heck yeah.
It's, for me, it's been great to learn it's bigger than me. So it used to be like, I don't want people to feel like I did. And then now it's just like, I don't want people to feel othered, period. And that has opened me up to, I'd always fought for, women and people of color. And now it's like, okay, what are the other things that I'd never even thought to fight for because I didn't feel like it's not my thing. But now there's so many other opportunities now that I'm a little bit over myself. I think it's like, oh yeah, here are these other things. Just because I didn't grow up like this doesn't mean I can't support and amplify these other voices that need me. And like, okay, I'm in the room and I got into the room. Who else is not in this room?
Yeah.
So it's definitely, there's a lot of like hard stuff that's happened, but I would not be fighting for and who I am today if those things didn't happen to me. So I try to be as empathetic as possible to people that don't, because I do have friends who are like, I have no idea that happened to you, or like I have no idea that this is happening to people that look like you or are you. So it is tough, but yeah, it's definitely been an interesting few years with Bus Filipinos, but also I think for a lot of people, like an interesting past couple of years.
For sure. Well. And, I just, there's a part of me that's like, I feel like younger us, we would have hung out and been like, cause I in the same way in the last, 5.5, 6 years ago was when I was leaving my survival grind, my dealing with the hard parts of my life. I'm just going to keep hustling. I'm not going to put my head up. I can't, that kind of thing. Yeah, I'll go to therapy, sure. But therapy fits in a very specific slot of my day so I can keep going. Yep. So in pulling up, it made me realize, oh, okay, the hustle isn't working. And if the hustle's not working, what are all the other things tied to that web that's keeping me moving forward? And when you start loosening that up, that's when you start seeing all these different dynamics and you're realizing, oh, okay, I thought I had the utmost control of everything that was happening in my life. And when you start realizing you got to let go of some of that, that's where I think it becomes really scary, because we have this kind of fallacy that we think our actions, our beliefs, everything that we do has such a profound impact on everything and every part of our path. And when we start looking up and seeing, wait, there are things that are outside of my control and are outside of my control that are shaping my experience in this world, it can be its own mind fuck. And so I think there is this, especially, I mean, you and I grew up same generation, same time frame, the color blindness of it all. I think the assimilation is very, very, very key to the story. I think there are a lot of us that it was just like go along to get along so you can get, work hard so you get noticed, and work hard so hard that no one notices who you are or how you're different, just notices how good you are at what you do. And so much of that is like, I guess that is work ethic to a certain extent. But when you've been working this hard and you have been told you can put your mind to whatever you put your mind to, you can achieve, but you see all these other people that look different than you, that are getting opportunities that you would never have, that are not necessarily performing to the same levels you are. When you think you have control and your actions are making everything happen, you consistently think there's something flawed about me, that I'm not achieving like that person if I'm operating from this colorblind society, right? Or even, I would say level playing field society. Let's just leave it that way, because it might not be about color. And so there is so much, I think, that is overwhelming as we as a collective have been waking up a little, and I'll say a little bit more, and I hope more and more day by day for each person. I know for me, definitely. But there is also this feeling as we start acknowledging the things that happened, or realizing, oh, that's what that was, that there is this kind of storm inside ourselves of like, well, I don't know, I'll speak for myself. There's a storm of like a little bit of shame that I didn't know, a little bit of like ignorance that like, why didn't I stand up for myself? And I will tell you, 5-year-old me, I have some 5-year-old stories, and I'm like, I think back, I'm like, 5-year-old me shouldn't have to be standing up for that. That's not right, Nikki. Like, that's not, you didn't do anything wrong there. But it was funny, earlier this year, I did a talk, and it was funny. It was in front of my father. It was a part of a church racial justice ministry. And I was sharing stories of what, how racism had shown up in my upbringing. And it was interesting because like my father immigrated here from Haiti when he was a teenager. And he has his own kind of identity with regard to his race, and also where he's from, his ethnicity, but also his assimilation to America. And my father's very much into soccer. And so soccer was a huge part of his identity that was much more than kind of the other social identity buckets. But it was so interesting for me to share my experience through that lens with somebody who I think we haven't necessarily ever had the opportunity to speak about race until the last couple of years. And the interesting part, as you're saying, as you say these stories, it starts opening up for you. What I started realizing was I don't actually have to know my laundry list. I know the feeling. That feeling shows up before anything happens, because your body is so wise from these experiences that so often I found myself questioning and gaslighting myself a little bit to be like, no, we just need to push through. That wasn't bad. That wasn't that bad. But when you keep pushing that down, your body's like, it was that bad. It's been that bad. Listen to me, please. So I think there is a part of this that is like, it's a little discombobulating internally as we're coming to grips with all different aspects of our identity, and also all different aspects of society, both in present times and then what has been passed down from generation to generation. As you're talking about, when a new generation enters the neighborhood, it's like, record scratch, what just happened here? That we're kind of having that same little shuffle of things, and I shouldn't say little, it's not little, that's happening across mediums, right? Across different locations and spaces and dynamics that we're in. Family, home, friendships, work, for sure. And then whatever we want to call the community of social media, that we don't actually know each other that well necessarily, but we all have something to say about each other's identity based on the little tiny two-dimensional image we have of each other. So yeah, I think as you're talking about all that and feeling all the myriad of emotions slash just experiences of what other is, how othering has shifted and changed, and how it's still very much a thing. I think, the biggest part of this is about humanity, and so much of what you do, and like, I think so much of what you do so incredibly well, at least from my experience of you, is seeing the person and allowing that person to feel like they're welcome to be who they are in whatever space. And so I just, I will never forget the invite that you sent for the customer love event. And it was a customized video to my inbox. It was like, hey, Nikki, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to? I'm like, how many of these things did she do? And also, it feels like she just knocked on, it feels like you just knocked on my door and were like, you are welcome to be here. It's because you are so wonderfully you. Please come and join us to make this a wonderful experience. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's the thumbprint, the fingerprint, the human touch. That is what we need more of. And yes, it's beautiful that there are ways to automate that and make it a little bit more accessible, but there is still effort. There's still hustle. There's still you showing up as you that makes that happen. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you think about creating those experiences where people do feel kind of that human touch, or that at least the Trish brand comes through hard. How do you think about that as you do that personally yourself? But I know that's so much a part of what you do every day as well.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome job transitioning.
Oh, it's just so you know, this is just what my brain does.
Yeah, that was like amazing. Yeah, it's funny because, kind of going back a little bit of you talking about how I learn. Marty Constant actually talks about, I don't know if you know her at all, but her whole thing is agile careerists. So like agile people. And who connected me to her? I just like name dropping people. So even if I think it was Katie Martell introduced me to her. And Marty was writing this book about agile careerists, and I'd never heard about it before. And she basically asked me about my entire work experience, which dates back to me working at Chuck E. Cheese when I was 16.
Yep.
All the way to, at the time, I was like global director of community at Startup Institute. And a lot of people in the different places I've worked have said, wow, you're so good at changing careers, and you're so good at XYZ thing. And she was like, you're just following your path. Like, you are someone that goes for opportunities because of the learnings versus the title, versus staying in a particular industry. Like when I went from Startup Institute is like ed tech, essentially, there was an in-person aspect of it too, to working at Freight Farms, which is a hardware software. You could run this farm from your phone, but then you also had a 40-foot shipping container. Right. Everyone was like, great job at changing careers. I'm like, my, customer experience and community, like this is all about, I always say H2H, human to human versus B2B and B2C. And instead of going to, having educational resources for these people that are transitioning from their careers into tech, I'm now, going to farming events, and it's the same thing, right? But it's just the language and the vernacular changes. So yeah, for me, it's the through line for me has always been, how do I combine technology and humanity together if I like look back and think about it? Because the thing that brought me out of kind of the sad times of growing up and feeling othered is, and I name dropped earlier for the people that are of our elder millennials and know about Angel Fire and GeoCities, is I made a website. I joined a web ring, which was a collection of websites. I got to know people on the internet that didn't live in my hometown, that were different, that like the same things I did. Some people knew who I was as a human if I decided to share my picture with them. Some people just knew me as anonymous girl in chat room, and we talked about Sailor Moon and all the silly things. And I'm like, oh, cool, I can connect with people about things that are important to me, things I'm passionate about, and it has nothing to do with where I'm from or where my parents are from.
Yeah.
And that happened in my like pre-teens. Thank you to my brother that got me on early version of AOL and that kind of stuff. And so when I think about that of having this small town, the good parts of small town mentality, which is living in a place where people know about you. There was a point in time where my parents could just drop me off at neighbors' houses if an emergency came up. So how do I combine that small town vibe,
Yeah.
not the racism part,
The
small
family
town,
part. Yeah.
the family part,
Yeah.
the let's take care of each other, bars, sugar,
Yeah.
life happens part, with technology, which is this amazing thing that allows us to talk to people from all over the world and learn things and see things we wouldn't normally get to see.
Yeah.
And that was very much what VSnap was, the video messaging platform that I used to get into startups, because the differentiator was, when people are looking at businesses online, if XYZ company and ABC company are both having sales, it's like, what are you loyal to? What do you drawn to? And a lot of places are like, oh, this, I see more humans here. They have better customer service. They have great copy in their emails, something that makes me, those little things that
Yeah.
make people feel included. And now here at Simpler, if you go to our website, you'll see a whole thing about the now customer, which is a lot of us now, we're on all times of day. When we want to ask a question, we hope there's or assume that there will be live chat or some way for us to get in touch. If there isn't live chat and there's email, we want an email latest next business day, but hoping to get it sooner rather than later when they're on the website.
Mm.
And having this tool, so we have this network of independent contractors we call our human cloud network. And then we also have this amazing AI technology that empowers them with information so that when they work, this human cloud network and our technology, when we partner up with our customers, their end users, their customers can have 24/7 customer support and have empathy and be
Mm.
knowledgeable about their story in some way, and just provide it in a quick and easy way.
Mm.
And it's really interesting because my brother actually was telling me this story the other day of a friend that had pitched his company, and he's stealth mode, which is another conversation for another day. So I won't talk about what the company is, even though I could plug it right now if I wanted to. But someone gave him feedback of that basically was like, couldn't you get AI to do it? And people just had this idea that like, let's replace humans. And
Yes.
I'm very much
Ugh.
if anyone knows improv, yes, and kind of
Mhm.
person. So
Mhm.
let's use technology to automate the mundane tasks, the things that we really shouldn't be thinking about. Like even think about like alarms. How easy is it now for a lot of people to voice say like, let me set this alarm versus sitting at your clock radio and like, oh man, I missed the time. I have to
Yes.
like go back to another thing, like stuff like that. Why am I spending brain cells
Yeah.
doing that when I can easily do something else? And then let the technology do what it needs to do, but use the humans to, okay, this person is writing because they're getting an outfit for their graduation, or
Yeah.
this person is writing this because their wedding it needs to be postponed and they have to cancel with us. And if you think about, a lot of companies are all about the auto replies. They're all about these quick bots, and there's no humanity there.
Yeah.
You're not building relationships with people, and the people are, I hate this, like our competitive advantage is, again, if you go back to the ABC XYZ companies, what company, okay, price, all things considered, maybe one's a little bit cheaper, but this one was really warm last time I talked to them about my graduation. They gave me the suggestion and something went wrong and something happened with the shipping, but they were so great in the recovery.
Yeah.
And those are the things that, especially right now, if you consider all the things that are happening, the delays in the universe,
Yeah.
those relationships are so important. And it goes back to the, small town vibe of like, Jimmy's Pizza, 99.9% of the time they're amazing, but there's that one time that kid worked and he like didn't put my pepperoni on. But you know what? They're amazing the rest of the time.
Right.
And web companies can do that. And
Yeah.
people spend so much money trying to get new customers. It's like treat your current customers well
Yeah.
and have them talk about how amazing your support is and have them be your evangelists and turn them into fans. We call them VIPs so that they can talk about your companies, because that is more powerful than any ad is, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's really cool to work at a company that's one, the team's great, but that's focusing on like, yes, let's automate things where things should be automated and um are probably exciting to people to work at doing some of these automated tasks, but let's tap into this network of empathetic people that have been trained to personalize these responses, to treat people like humans,
Yeah.
and help them when they need it. And maybe even say like, something that actually is pertinent to like the situation that they're in, and have a little bit of light in the day,
Yeah.
versus, a lot of people deflect. Like, I don't want people love the deflection is a big thing in customer experience of like, okay, let's like see how many customers we don't have to talk to
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really fun. And then a part of that is I'm also working, or I head up a community. I always feel weird saying hang up because
That's all
I work
right.
with another person. We're colleagues. Is
Co-head up.
CX
Yeah.
co-head up is a community called CX Life. So prior to me joining, they were talking to a lot of these customer experience professionals and seeing that they needed some help leveling up in their careers. And so this is a community that we started outside of, so it's not our customer community, it's outside of our company. Although we call Simpler our parent company,
Okay.
because they're the ones that make sure we live and exist and happen.
Yeah.
And it's a private community, so it's just for customer experience professionals. So if they want to ask questions that they wouldn't ask in front of their boss or executives, et cetera, we don't record our meetups unless they're classes. And so it's a safe space where people can ask, we have something actually tomorrow that's like, how do I level up in my career? We have someone that I think I want to say in the past 3 or 4 years, she's gotten several promotions, and people don't always know how to do that.
Mm.
So we're not recording it. You have to be there. Well, there'll probably be a blog post on CX Life, but so people can ask those questions of like, I'm sure someone's going to ask about salary,
Yeah.
and you can always ask those questions in different places.
Right.
What does she think she did, to level up and show her bosses that she is valuable? So it's really exciting. Obviously, we can tap into, I ask questions that are helpful to the Simpler universe, but they're actually pretty separate.
Yeah.
Because the buyer persona for Simpler is actually different than CX Life, but it is what kind of drew me into this company is like, let's invest in the up and comers and the
Yeah.
people that are going to be in the space, because they're asking these questions and we have some of these answers, and we have a really great network of mentors and people that can help them in their careers. So it's really awesome and kind of feeds into all the other jobs I had before but didn't realize that it would.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think
yeah.
there's something so important. Again, it's so very much in alignment with what you're saying of investing in the community that you're a part of, even if
Yes.
it's not the stage that you're a part of it at right now. And
Yeah.
I think there is a part of what we're experiencing right now with regard to AI and how let's AI it all. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that don't even know what that means when they say it. They're just like, I don't want to do it anymore. There's got to be some robot that does it better than me, not understanding what the drawbacks are and what the actual benefits might be. And if this is something that needs to actually be automated through this particular type, and how many different versions of AI are there? And it's just so interesting because there's a book, I'm not going to remember it, what it's called. And I just recommended it to a coaching client the other day by Daniel Pink, and it's about the future. The human. It's about right brain thinkers being the future, and it was like mid to late 2000s, like 2008 or something. It came out, but the idea that we have spent And the way I found out about it was in Oprah Soul Sessions. She was talking to him. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of Oprah. Should I add Winfrey just in case nobody knows who that is? But they were talking about that the future of the way that we operate as human beings and how we are really able to step into and embody our value as workers, why we should be showing up to work every day, is that we need to be leaning into the right side of our brain. We've spent so much time leaning on being left-brained and analytical, and the idea that tech is actually closing the gap on the left side, that the right side, the soft skills, again, air quotes for all of you that can't see, that have been minimized or kind of, I don't know, made a joke of at times, or as like, oh, that's a nice to have, but that's not actually part of your performance review. We're not going to compensate you for that incredible level of humanity you're showing up with in the office. That there is such a huge shift. I can get on soapboxes about this, but the importance of us really creating and honoring space for the humanity that we all have within us, the right side of our brains that we all have, that so often in order to be productive, in order to be to survive the hustle of our culture, we've been told, it's the kind of the doctor, lawyer side of things, like go do the thing where you can memorize the thing and learn the thing and be the best at this thing that makes you a whole lot of money. And if you can churn and burn productively and do it really, really efficiently, even better. What we're learning now is that there's the things that are able to be made efficient to a point that it's beyond humanity. It's happening. And what we still need, and what we are now, as consumers, at the very least, we're expecting the ability for there to be a heartbeat on the other side. We're expecting there the ability for you to understand the nuance of my experience, because we're not all in that, 2.5 kids, white picket fence way that we've been told America was. It's not the Mad Men era of seeing who we're marketing to and what we're marketing, and we're even more so. I could dive into census numbers that are showing that we're even more diverse than we expected 5 years ago from the census. And you talk about, buying power and the people that are actually making the decisions in how to purchase. So if we're really going to lean on that left side of things, the numbers and the metrics that we're leaning on are actually being enforced by people that aren't falling within the lines and the confines of how we've created these really, really efficient, productive systems. And so the ability to create this space for that right side to show up, for that human part to show up, and also on top of it all, Oprah a little bit, Brene Brown a little bit, the vulnerability that you have to be willing to have to stay in that human space when you're talking about things where people are, where you want to deflect, where you want to defer them somewhere else, where you don't want to be in the sticky, icky stuff with people, where you have to actually be able to handle conflict. Because so many of us, we grew up in a participation trophy generation. We weren't told when we lost, right? And like, how much better would everybody be if we learned how to lose? We had one of the most powerful human beings in our country, still can't quite figure out how that goes. Like there is a lot of this space that we have and have had the capacity for, but have been moved towards success in a very specific paradigm that has made it so we've detached from ourselves. And not only outside, it's important, but I think, again, the therapy lovers that we are, when you aren't able to be connected to who you are, you're already doing yourself a disservice. There's so much extra work. And one of the things I wrote down when you were talking about the AI piece and the human piece is, like, so often when we talk about AI, it is for the like short term, let's get it done. And the long term, when you don't have the human, is that the satisfaction level is not going to be there. So you actually do have to come back and revisit as a human further down the line, where there's a level of frustration that's so much more difficult for that human to deal with than if you just took maybe one more moment and had that human interaction with someone. And there is, again, that, like, instead of it being nearsighted, being a little bit more farsighted, or just, 20/20 vision might be helpful. We could see a little bit of both, would be really helpful for us in how we move forward in, the population that we're in now expects the ability for you to do both, because we've been on the internet from the jump. And the Gen Z folks have been on the internet even before, but like the idea that tech and AI can replace a person, it's like, no, that's always been part of my existence here. So, and then what? Not just, okay, that's there and that'll take care of it. It's like, no. I'm expecting there to be this ability for us to exist in an integrative fashion to this experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's as someone that has worked in customer experience, so being, my I've had a community role and I've also had customer experience role. And the thing that, is interesting too, because people are always like, how does your degree tie back into what you do? And I think the cool thing that no one, later on Emerson, I started to go back and speak, but for a while, I didn't go back to any alumni events because I'm like, I'm not working on a sitcom. I'm not writing a
Mm,
book. Like, how do these things tie in? And for me, the customer experience is the exact same as writing a really great story. The protagonist of the story for every company is their customer.
mm,
And if I take out a button, if I don't provide a service, it's like taking out a secondary or tertiary character in a novel. It completely changes the way the path goes, And so there are things that, I mean, I don't think that I'm like really excited for the people out there that are working on the sitcoms and the novels and how that led there. But for me, I use my degree all the time to think about, the way I would talk to someone, to empathize with people. You do that with characters all the time.
yeah.
But the humanity piece, I mean, maybe I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, but we've seen so many robot fails that we should all know that there should always be a human backup someplace.
Yes. Yes.
There are really simple questions for sure. If there's a chat bot or something, like there's like in and out kind of stuff that are really great to have an auto response. But I'll tell the story, and I don't know if I want to drag this company or not, but there's a company that I have been a customer for 20 years,
Mm,
20. They texted me and said that I got an anniversary gift of some sort. I'm like, cool, cool. Click on the link. I go and it goes to like a nonsense page. So part of me is like, is this not legit? But then I look up to their text messages and they've always used this number to like
right.
message
Yeah.
me about important things. And so I then try to use their bot to figure out what this thing is. And the bot keeps giving me, oh, are you looking up a gift card? I'm like, no, this is my gift. This is my anniversary. And I just, working at my company, I'm like, all right, let me see how far I can take it. Like, when is the
Yeah.
human must come in at some point.
Yeah.
And they did not have it attached to a human at all. It was just the bot, and I had to go to the website, see where the email was. There's no hours. Like, they just really did not want me to contact them. And it's pretty cruddy for someone that has been a customer for 20 years. And so, will I continue to use the service? Maybe, but I don't even want to give them breath. Like, I'm not even going to talk
Right.
about them
Yeah.
so people can look them up, go to their website and play around. And and people don't even realize, the thing that we're still not even able to measure accurately in this tech world is word of mouth,
Yeah.
unless companies ask. And for me, having worked in enterprise and working in B2B, business to business, you should always be asking how you hear about us. And you'd be so surprised, or maybe not you, but like people would be so surprised. It's like, I heard about it from this person.
Yeah.
And I've had the experience of like, wow, this person's like not even a customer.
Right.
And then I'll think back like, oh, they went to see me speak, or they went to a demo X amount of years ago, didn't buy the product, loved talking to me, loved talking to my colleague, and have now just built up good vibes with us
Yeah.
that they're promoting again without being a customer. And people, and it's hard to even measure that. It's like one of the hardest things as a community builder, that one of my metrics is word of mouth. But you can't even, it's such a long haul game.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
people that, if you think about my boss that reached out to me 9 years after we met, and we
Yep.
didn't even really interact as much, but I remember him being a user of the product, and I probably sent him a video that was like, hey
Hey.
Daniel, I'm Trish.
Yeah.
And I sent over 10, I say over 10,000, and people keep on telling me different numbers, so maybe at least 10,000, it's probably more, um but not the reason why the company didn't do well is people didn't send them back to me. The company did get acquired, but we were just too early. I mean, I was pitching people that had like sidekicks. Yeah. So that was the vibe then. But it very much, it's the Maya Angelou quote, it's people will forget what you said and what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
For sure.
And no one ever, we have mystery shops on the Simpler platform, but I'm sure you can look up other surveys. No one was like, that bot made me feel great. Yeah. I'm going to be so loyal to that company. Yeah. I felt so loved by that bot. I'm going to be a customer. People might've said, I got the information quickly and I got it when, yeah. I'm not saying that, but no one's ever like, I'm so loyal to this company now because their bot's amazing.
Yes. I just feel like I snuggled up with that bot. Do you feel that too?
Yeah. The bot was like great. Yeah. The bot was so amazing.
It's funny because it's amazing how we forget that. I mean, one of the things that I've been working with a lot of clients is about the recruiting process right now and how it's become so disturbingly automated to the point where you're like shooting your shot and if you're writing cover letters, which I've got my own feelings about cover letters, but like you're pouring yourself into looking into this company and showing yourself, and then you never hear back. It's like you're getting ghosted all over the place, or your email, your resume isn't even making it through the metrics that are put in place for the filters that are put in place for any human being to ever see these things. And we're also, this is also for a lot of companies that are claiming inclusion, equity, belonging, but are like, well, you've got to fit all these boxes before we even look at you as a viable human in this experience.
Yeah.
What we have is we have this huge dynamic of like, we want you to be human. We're realizing now, whether we actually are changing our systems and structures, it's a different story, but we know we should be saying it for some folks. But turnover is a very expensive thing. Onboarding folks, very expensive. Training folks, very expensive. Employee morale. I mean, right now we're experiencing the Great Resignation, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of bottom line stuff that's hitting you right now because you're not investing in your people and you're not investing in the humanity of your company. And so it's so interesting to hear from your perspective of how you guys are really trying to create a hybrid of here's where the tech can actually make this lift a lighter lift, but you still show up with it, that it actually makes it so you're not struggling as hard, but we're opening up more space for you to show up in that space as a human being and look at all of the beauty that it can bring. And look, that what I always tell people when I'm in coaching with them, especially the folks that are trying to like make a change that's outside of what their resume might seem. I'm like, well, you gotta bring you to the party, because the ripple effects that you have by showing up, you'll never know the impact of them fully, never. And that's not the point. We're not going to know word of mouth all the way through. We want to get some sort of sense. We want to understand if we're getting experiences from the different things we're doing, but there is absolutely no way we're going to do that. And that's where it's really powerful. It's kind of like the whole idea of legacy through storytelling. Like you never know who's going to know about you, but if your story is being told, the impact that has the ability to kind of surpass so much that your reach could give. And so it's so interesting to think about how the kind of marrying of these two incredible forces, both of which, I mean, it depends who you're talking to, but like the idea of I was having a conversation the other day about the cloud. It goes with my mom and my grandma, and they're like, what is it? I don't know. I can't see it. Okay. Right. And I'm like, I mean, I can't really see it either. I gotcha. But the idea of this ambiguous place of unknown, and then also the idea that word of mouth is kind of this ambiguous place of unknown that we can try to capture in different metrics in different ways. And hopefully you remember the name of the person that did this thing, but how did they get here? Maybe I can matrix all that in my brain, but maybe it's 5 people removed. Maybe it's that game of Kevin Bacon of like 6 degrees from him, And our ability to just be okay. Wow. Bringing it right back. Didn't even mean to do this, but be okay in that kind of in between, in the ability that like we're picking up that book that we don't know what the book says, to be comfortable in the fact that we're going to be a sponge and learn the things we're going to learn, trusting that we're creating a space for people to show up as themselves, because they haven't, again, and I should say we haven't necessarily been allowed to do that. And it's amazing what happens and what you hear and who you get to know about somebody that you probably have known for 20 years, that when you give them the space to show up differently and show up more human, the amazing stuff that can come to the forefront with that. And I think that it sounds like I know that that's what you do in like all the places that you're doing the amazing stuff you're doing, but even in the work that you're doing with Simpler and CX Life, that it's creating space for people, as you're saying, for CX professionals to come and be like, oh, I'm not really allowed to say this at work, but can I say this here?
Yeah.
It gives the
Yeah.
ability for people to just be able to exist as a multidimensional person. And that creates, I always think it is a pay it forward type dynamic that hopefully in other parts of their lives, they're creating more space for other people to be that way, whether it's work or otherwise. So I think I don't know if you can tell, gushing on Trish is a very real thing. Just so you all know, before we hopped on here, I was like, Trish, just so you know, the subject line to my team about this interview was gushing about Trish. So happy you're here. So for those of you that are listening, if you feel the need to gush about Trish after this, please do, all day.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely feel the sense of community. I think I feel like I'm very privileged because I get to live in the CX life and I get to live on Simpler, and those are like, we're all one team, but we kind of work on separate things, and there's a need for people to be focusing on certain things. And I think with Simpler and what we call the Human Cloud Network, which is our group of independent contractors that work for us and are the people that are these empathetic, awesome humans that are delivering these conversations via email and via chat with our customers, is so important. And the investment that that team, I'm going to name drop. I won't drop their last names in case they don't want it, but you can always look this up on LinkedIn. But Crystal and Adam have dealt with there's specialists and experts that we work with. They have a community where they not only talk about work, but they talk about how this work has impacted their lives. So as independent contractors, we do work with a lot of people that are traveling families, that are military families, that are stay-at-home moms, and they're telling stories about, and I have this like super great privilege of writing a newsletter. I get to recap this and talk to our customers about it, of being able to buy homes, being able to adopt, all these amazing things I wouldn't normally get to do because of these quote unquote regular. And this was more, I think we've realized this even more so now, but not everybody is fit or prepared or has the time to work a traditional 9 to 5 or full-time job. They have different circumstances. They live in different places. They move a lot. There's just things that would potentially make them not an ideal candidate. And we are very much looking for these amazing people because, again, if we're operating 24/7, there's always going to be opportunities for people to be online no matter where they are in the US, in addition to being able to use their skill sets and be able to travel and take this kind of work with them.
Yeah.
And I think also with CX Life, I'm like super proud about our recent key manager. She came on over the summer and she like pointed out, like, I love that you said diverse and what you're actually talking about. This actually feels like a diverse community. One of the programs that we just started is called the Upstream series. And so Malini, this woman who works, she's the director of customer success at Social Live, which is a video platform. Her and I had been going back and forth and talking about what it's like to be women of color in conferences. And for me, I very much, I'm like a little bit of a reluctant leader. I mean, calling back to the Boss Filipinos thing, but also to this series, in that I thought we would be further at this point. And I still go to CX conferences, some tech conferences, where the lineup is very homogenous.
Yeah.
And it doesn't match the customers that are coming in. It doesn't match the employees that are coming in. And how do we fix this? Because the subjects and things that are discussed at conferences filter and impact the way we do business. It filters and impacts who we hire. It filters and impacts down to our customers. And so for me, with the Upstream series that we just started, our first topic, believe it or not, is empathy and CX. But yeah, really focusing and highlighting people that are historically underrepresented and giving them a stage, or a virtual stage, hopefully someday a real stage. Yes. Cross your fingers. But there are the people that, have been either doing the thing that they've been doing for a really long time, but no one's ever asked them because of potentially what they look like, what their title is. They've always asked their boss to speak at this event. And a lot of these frontliners have amazing stories and are really dynamic and can really go into the how-tos and what happened. Not no offense to like the VPs out there. Some of the servant leaders out there, dive in and know what's going on. And some of them are like, here are the numbers and here's what my team did. But what I'm really excited is to see, people are asking me where I want this series to go. I don't want it to exist in a few years. I want it to not be a thing anymore because I don't want to run it for like more than a few years because it's again, I have been in customer facing roles in tech for over 10 years now. And the fact that I can pull out a program from a conference I went to in 2011 and still see the same people speaking and have it be very homogenous. I don't know why people, don't nominate others to speak, but it is this people are like, what empire do you want to build with this? I'm like, I don't want it to be a thing. I want it to be there's so many different voices and there's so many different people that are from all these different backgrounds that are sharing their experiences that I don't need to. My team, CX Life, Simpler, and Social Life, we're all sponsoring this event series that we don't need to do this anymore. But it's one of those things I'm like, I can't not do anything anymore. So I was waiting for someone else to kind of make it happen. And, I think in particular, people will do conferences and see gender parity. And it's sometimes white women and no other people of color. And I, as a woman, I'm like, yes, women, I like to see them there. I'm so excited. But I'm also like, okay, what's one step further than that? Like, let's get other people with different experiences. And I'm really excited about this. And one of the things that what I love about Social Live is they're going to make little video clips. And this as a speaker, how important this is.
Yeah.
Little video clips and trailers for these people so that when they apply to conferences, they can either put in their LinkedIn or they can send it in, and they're doing these lightning talks. So it'll give them, all the people that are seeing it, hopefully other event organizers, a little taste of who they are.
Yeah.
And so they could look past their job title or look past other things that might have helped them back in the past. And so I'm like super stoked about it, but I'm also like, anytime it's like, what's the future? I'm like, not existing. I don't want it to be a thing.
Let's also say this. I think that so much of your story has been, I'm going to trust what shows up. And so
yeah,
I'm not a big fan of the 5-10-year plan type question about things.
Yeah.
And so right now, 5-10-year plans are more like 6 months a year because of the way the world has been and how much has been changing. So
I think pandemic in their 5-year plan. If so, we need to question them.
Yeah, seriously. What's going on over there? Do I want your information? Yeah. Do I want you on my team or do I want to stay away? I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it's a really interesting thing, I think, as we talk about diversity. I mean, again, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging have all become, unfortunately, synonymous, even though they're not. And when we stop at diversity, that's when we get numbers-based stuff. That's when we get photo-based stuff. That's where we get like, I check the box and move along. It's not about the experience. It's not about the actual goal that we're trying to reach. It's about the fact that, okay, are you all happy now? We did it 1 year. Is that good enough? Or this one person keeps going over and over again. And the whole point of this is that it's not the same voices echoing. It's the idea is that you're allowing more voices to be heard. And the fact that it's okay for even, and I mean, here's what I think it's important for us to also allow for there to be nuances among those voices too, that somebody that might have been here multiple times over has the ability to actually be a human in the experience. They don't have to be a talking head saying the same thing over and over again and be expected to, quote, influence, even though it's the same thing repackaged in a different way. I think there is an important part when you have the microphone, no matter how big or small the stage is, to be able to not only create space for you to be more genuinely, authentically who you are and where you are along your learning journey, as we were talking about our own discoveries for our identity and the fact that you're constantly making constantly making discoveries as you go, but also that we're creating space to not say, ooh, well, you need to cross these thresholds in order to qualify for your voice to matter. And a lot of times you
Mm-hmm.
hear like the giving a voice to the voiceless, and it's, unfortunately, we've categorized people as voiceless. Nobody is voiceless. Even if you can't use your voice, you have the
Yeah.
ability to share your story in different ways. You have the
Yeah.
ability to communicate. And unfortunately, we have a system, structure, society that is centered around us saying, oh, well, here are all the ways that you can't do these things. Here are the reasons you haven't been allowed to exist in this space. And that is like, oh, okay, that's the way it is. Instead of being like, let's blow up the reasons, because the reasons are framed around a whole bunch of exclusionary crap that actually don't even serve the people who get to have the microphone all the time. Because if
Yeah.
they get to have the microphone all the time, they have to be a very specific version of themselves in order to stay within the lines. And so I think it's amazing that you're creating this space. I think it's beautiful for you to be in the present moment and love it while you can and while you want it. And also, you don't have to hold on to it forever. You can pass it along. Other people can take that space and take that torch and run with it, especially as you're saying, hey, I was waiting. I think a lot of us, especially again, after the last year and a half to 2 years, have been like, where are all those Black square people? Where are all those people that are like, I'm going to use my privilege and power?
Yep.
Where are you? Because here, take this, start this, go plan this, go do this. You don't even have to take the stage. You can create it and allow for other people to do it if you're afraid of those things. And I think that there's a part of this that, like, unfortunately, the trending dynamic that seems to come about these really important human long-standing things, hopefully we create more space for people to realize that as you do these things, as you create this space, it actually helps every person. Even if from an identity perspective you feel like you have been included from the beginning, when you are allowed to hear different people's stories and allowed for more people to be in the space, it's beautiful to be able to see the spectrum of humanity. So I'm excited for you. I'm also going to hold some space for whatever organically in a present moment shows up for this, because I think that there's going to be some really great beauty. And even if it's a one-time thing, I think it's beautiful for it to be a one-time experience for people to have. So I'm amped about that.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk for a million years, but I really do. So I guess we're just going to have to do this some more. And I just want to give you some, is there anything else you want to share with the wonderful listeners here that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think so. I think for the upstream series in particular, so we're not doing an event. It's going to be, I don't know what people's vibes are for a bi-monthly these days, because some people are like, oh, are you doing it like a couple of times? And like, no, every other month. So I'm saying every other month and not using the word bi-monthly. But we're having an event in October, and then I don't even want to touch December. So we're going to have an event in January, and then hopefully doing it every other month and having different themes. So if people want to speak at this event, again, we're highlighting historically underrepresented voices. Although if you want to be a speaker and you want to talk to me about it, I think for me in particular, in addition to the representation side, I think for me, speaking more, which Nikki and I talked about this a little bit. I haven't been doing as many speaking gigs during the pandemic for a bajillion different reasons.
Same.
But one, I think it's a really great way to get yourself out there. Even if you're introverted, I feel like, finding this opportunity. I actually, people don't believe this. I don't identify as an extrovert. But I think it's a really great way to, one, practice speaking, just period. So you can speak at events, you can speak up in your life. If someone's trying to, talk you into something and learning how to speak that way, it's a really great way to, in addition to working hard, getting noticed by your boss, if you're looking for different opportunities, getting what you believe in, your values, how you work out there, I think is really important. It's one of the reasons, in addition to getting more speaking gigs, I want people to have these, sound bites of themselves and who they are. That is not just the sheet of paper on their LinkedIn's or websites or social media. So if you want to be a speaker, period, but the upstream series in particular is highlighting those different voices. But if you are like, how do I not talk like me, because you should talk like you. I'm a little bit of it's like Nikki, you're like you people have missed my Muppet faces, and I like am lovingly embrace the fact that I'm a little bit of a Muppet. So that is, I think, part of my charm. But yeah, I think that's the one in particular. And then if you live in Boston and are looking for a Filipino community, hit up Boss Filipinos. I didn't expect anyone that would want to like talk to me about Simpler, but if you want to talk to me about Simpler or CX life, maybe you're out there. I'm the community person, so I don't sell anything. So everything you heard,
come hang out. Yeah.
Hang out. Maybe my CMO will listen to this and be like, Trish, what's up? Wait, I did not get trained to talk about our company the way that I just did. So we'll see media training wise.
Yeah. And if I'm going to just bring it back to if you're like that person that was sitting next to me and Trish at over our London fogs, and you heard what we were talking about and you wanted to be part of the conversation, definitely reach out to Trish, reach out to us, let us know, because
That's happened to me multiple times.
Yeah.
I've like sat in places in Boston and I've gotten an email later that was like, you were sitting at this Starbucks and
you were wearing
yeah, for sure. And I'm like, it starts off like that and I'm like, oh no, this doesn't sound good. I'm too easy. You can Google me like pretty easy. There's some other Fontanillas like in the Philippines, but they're younger and like, yeah. So I'm pretty findable, which is fortunate and unfortunate.
I was gonna say a blessing and a curse. Same with the name Nikki. With the name Nikki Innocent, same thing. It's a blessing and a curse in its own way. Yeah. I don't recommend Googling me. All right. Well, I am so grateful you were here today. We'll have to do something together, whether it's this or something otherwise. I am just so good to see your face too.
So good to see you too. And people that are listening can't see our faces, so maybe we'll take a picture and be like, this is our faces.
Screenshot. Hold on, I don't know how to use tech. Here we go.
I'm making a Muppet face. I hid my view, so I don't even know what hopefully
it's okay. I got you. Well, thank you for coming on Checkbox, Heather. I'm so grateful. And for all of you who are listening, hit up Trish. Hit her up, go follow her stuff. For those of you that are thinking about speaking, do it. Just do it. You'll be amazing.
You always think about, it doesn't even have to be about work stuff.
No.
What are you like what can you geek out about that your friends tell you to be quiet about?
Yeah.
Because if you go and speak, you're going to find those people that will be like, tell me more.
Yeah. You'll find those people. You'll find those people. You'll find your people.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
Such a good conversation, right? We didn't want it to end. I think you can get a sense of that. So I hope for those of you that have listened all the way through and are really thinking about potentially having your story shared on that Upstream series, I really, really, really encourage you, give you an extra nudge that your story matters and your voice matters. We need to hear more from you. We want to hear your story. And so definitely go and apply to be one of the wonderful voices as part of that series. And if you're feeling wobbly about it or you're unsure, definitely feel free to reach out. We've got different things and different ways that we can support you as you navigate this journey, because really your story is powerful and it deserves to be witnessed. I can't wait for you all to hear the amazing episodes we've got coming up. And if you don't already, go and follow Trish on all the social medias. We have more information in the show notes. So if there's anything that you wanted to learn more about, check there. And if it's not in there, hit us up on social media or email us at info@nikkyinnocent.com and let us know what you want to learn more about. All right, my friends, I can't wait to catch you on the next episode.